Welcome back, baseball fans, to another edition of the Prep Baseball of North Carolina podcast. I'm Brandon Hall, the Mid-Atlantic Director of Scouting, and with us this week again, Patrick Johnson, our Western North Carolina Scouting Director, and Zach Borowski, our Eastern North Carolina Scouting Director. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Things going good. How are you guys?
Good, going
All
great.
good here. How are your brackets going? Patrick, your bracket's still intact? I see your alma mater on your chest today.
The only one that matters is still in it, so I'm doing great right now.
I can't say mine's doing very well. I like the long shots and upset specials weren't really popular, as all the favorites seem to keep winning. Besides the Wolfpack.
Well, just so you guys know that the entire bracket, as it should, runs through Wilmington. I mean, if you haven't made that connection yet, I'll help you out here. James Madison, who was a darling in the first round. Mark Byington was in my he was actually one of my partners for econ, our econ lab that we had to do. So I've known Mark for a long time. Then you have Kevin Keats, who's the head coach at NC State. His first job was at Wilmington. Brad Brownell, Clemson, his first job was at Wilmington. Brad's lead assistant, Billy Donlin, played with Mark Byington, was there at school when I was there at school. NC State's director of strength conditioning was our catcher my last couple of years at Wilmington. And then the number 3 overall, or the number 3 seed, I think, in the West was Kentucky and John Caleb. Well, we won't talk about them.
Yeah.
That part didn't matter.
Yeah.
But the rest of it, Wilmington's controlling the tournament. That's all you need to know.
All right.
I think there was a guy from Fuquay had like one of the last perfect brackets, though, so maybe the bracketology still comes out of Fuquay. There was a guy from Fuquay that was in like the 1% left.
Really?
Yeah, he might have had like the last perfect bracket that went out the window, is what the kids were saying. Like he had like a video of it, like he was number 1. So it got beat the other day, but he was the last one, I think. The bracketology runs through Fuquay.
How many did he fill out? If he filled out 30 of them, I'm not giving it to him.
Listen, 30 out of a million is still pretty good odds.
It ain't bad. It's not bad.
Yeah, I was like, it's hard to do.
Did you guys watch any of the women's tournament?
Only if Caitlin Clark's playing. I saw
she got smoked by the girl from Holy Cross.
Yes,
yeah.
Which I'm gonna present my I'm gonna present my presence with authority. She just ran right through her.
Yeah, she's fun to watch. I could watch her shoot a basketball for a long
They
period.
won, right?
Yeah, they did.
They played tonight.
Did LSU end up winning?
They did.
They did. Little foul discrepancy at the end.
I was watching the LSU Florida series, and they kept flashing the score up there. And at half, it was tied. And in the third quarter, it was a 2-point game. And
yeah, there was a few more fouls in the fourth quarter.
LSU, so they had people leaving the game.
Yeah, there was a few more fouls for LSU that they got than Middle Tennessee. Kind of a lot more free throws than
It's going to be tough to beat that women's South Carolina team. Both of their first 2 games, I think they won by 50 each time.
Yeah.
And one of those was North Carolina, so that's unfortunate, but it happens.
I think Caitlin Clark plays tonight, though. I think Iowa plays tonight, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
I think they do play tonight.
They do. Yeah,
and there's not much
NCAA
NCAA
bracket was going to get the lone night.
Yeah, so it should be good. I think she's prime time tonight at 7.
Well, let's talk about it. And for those that are watching us now, we're trying to record this on Monday. I'm trying to get it out Monday night or Tuesday. The technical issues, if you watched last week's deal for Baseball Scouts, some of the technical stuff, some of the things that we do really well apply to us being at games, but the podcasting stuff, it's still on the fly. So we're going to get better each week. But today, as in Monday, we're going to drop the Power 25. Updating it every 2 weeks. So this is our second update to our preseason. This is the first time I feel like we've got the Power 25 in a position where we can actually defend the 25. We can defend their position. We can defend who's in and who's out because they've played enough games, most of them, for us to have at least a feel. And what I'd like to do is just kind of go through that Power 25, starting with numbers 21 through 25. At 21, we have Wakefield, who's 9-1. 22, Weddington. Weddington is down from number 12 to number 22 at 5-3. Northwest Guilford makes their first appearance in the Power 25 at 8-1, set at number 23. At number 24, again, another first-timer, Moorhead High School, 9-0. And at number 25, another 9-0 club, another club making their first appearance in the Power 25 this year, Green Central. When we're looking at that block of teams, guys, and I know we converse on this stuff, we talk about it, but eventually we got to put it in an order. Anybody in there that you kind of question, how they get in, or too high or too low?
No, I mean, I think you look at the new teams. I mean, they're 9-0, showing that they can be consistent, compete. Those deserve to be in. And then obviously Weddington had a few losses and dropped them down, but I mean, I think those look good.
Yeah, I mean, I think talent-wise, everybody's kind of right in the top 25. Has a guy, has an arm. When you got 3 losses early, and you're a top 10 team, you kind of get the benefit of being able to play through some losses and stay highly ranked. So I think, for Weddington's, they have enough talent to be a top 15 team in the state. So it's hard to drop them because at any point in time they go on a 10-game winning streak, you're never surprised. And they were always right there.
And they've played a good schedule. The loss this last week was to South Meck, who's also going to be in the Power 25 as we move forward. And looking at Wakefield, Wakefield's a club that I don't think they've given up more than 2 runs in a game. I may be off a little bit on that, but their pitching staff has really, really carried them. So to see them tick up from 25 to 21, opened up those 3 slots for the newbies. Northwest Guilford at 8-1. I'm a little shocked. They're off to as good a start as they are. They're playing a decent schedule. It's an offensively laden team. They've got to score runs, I think, to win. Moorhead, Anderson Nance has kind of catapulted and led that club this year. And it's always a good thing when seniors are in those positions. And Green Central, quite honestly, outside of box scores and rosters and kind of checking in with people on that side of the world, I don't know a ton about. But everybody I've talked to has been extremely impressed with the way they've played. Just a very clean game of baseball. They throw strikes, they catch the baseball, they put the ball in play. And you're sitting at 9-0, and 9-0 really doesn't matter who you've played. When you're playing 2 to 3 games a week, at some point you figure somebody's got a chance to get you if you're not very good. But one of the things we do have to battle is kind of 4A versus 1A, 2A versus 3A, in those schedules. And when you guys are looking at this board, how do you kind of dissect the bigger programs, the bigger schools versus some smaller ones? We got some smaller ones up a little bit higher on the board too, where they have one big arm, and you were just trying to dissect. Okay, how would that guy really fare in a 4A tournament?
I mean, I think when you talk about teams having that one big arm, I mean, you can tell, guys that have stuff, they can play whether it's 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, it doesn't matter. I mean, I think you have to look at that, but obviously in the bigger ones, the competition's better, but I think that you can see how they would fare by their stuff and how they play.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, was like when we were playing 1A, 2A, 3A schools, like the top 4 or 5, they could play for you in 4A baseball. They would be somewhere in your lineup, somewhere like the top 5 are never really changing. In baseball, 5 people can beat you. Heck, 1 person on the mound can beat you enough. Somewhere when you get a little lower, the 6, 7, 8, 9s, they might end up being role players versus starters. Some of the arms that are 2 and 3 might be a midweek guy instead of a conference guy, but the first 5, 1 and 2 usually can play pretty much with anybody. So you're not far away from the high end talents that, when people see it, they're like, oh, they're not no. The first 3 or 4, you're pulling from a population of 500 versus 2,000.
Right.
So
right.
like you're that's the biggest difference that people don't always see, is they just don't realize how close the talent is, especially for the first 4 or 5. And if they get hot, like you guys, they can beat anybody with 5 guys.
Well, and we see that in the state playoffs. We'll see a team that's had a really, really good year, that's 1-9 depth. They've got 5 arms they trust. They got 5 arms. They got a chance to go play college baseball, but they run into one really good high school pitcher. Maybe it's not even high end stuff, but he can really mix. He matches. He controls run game, controls short game. And all of a sudden it's 0-0 in the 6th, and they run into a ball. And now the team that's been the darling all year is on the verge of being knocked out by a team that really had no place being there. We've also seen it, and I go back to one of the, I think it was East Surrey and Hickory. And Hickory had Tyler Barnett. We had committed and signed Barnett to come to Charlotte when I was there. And Barnett had become electric. 92 to 95 at times. East Surrey hadn't lost all year, and Hickory kind of skin of their teeth gets into the tournament. Well, congratulations, East Surrey. Your first game as the number 1 seed, you get Tyler Barnett, and he freaking sticks it up your tail, and then they get run ruled the next game. But either way, East Surrey's gone. Probably the team that should have won the state title had there been a best of 3, best of 5 type situation. So we're going to see that. And I think that's a good way to kind of compare, looking at those 4A schools versus a 1A or 2A school that we may be trying to compare. The depth may not be there, but that top end has a chance to be good enough to really compete on any day. Let's move forward. We'll go 16 through 20. At 16, we've got Corinth Holders. Corinth Holders drops from number 7 to number 16. Pinecrest is at 17. They're down from 15. Wake Forest is up to number 18 from number 21. Number 19 is South Meck. Number 20 is First Flight. Both South Meck and First Flight are up from 23-24, and then they flipped. So South Meck is now 19, First Flight is 20. When we're looking at that second grouping of 5, what kind of stands out to you, Zach? What's the storyline out of that group of teams?
I think this is more of the arm dominant group. To me, I just think that all these teams have arms, and offensively, they probably haven't been where they want to be or they thought they were going to be early. But they have enough pitching that are keeping them into games. And this is more of the manufacturer. They could get hot because the arms could start dominating, and they win a lot of 2-1, 3-2 games. And I think that's kind of the group you're in here is they have some talent. They don't have I think South Meck has maybe a higher end arm, but They don't have that elite. There's not quite the elite. They're really good at one thing, but they're not quite good at both aspects of baseball. So they're starting to get to a little bit of a flaw where they're a little behind on hitting or they're a little behind on arms type deal.
Talk a little bit about Corinth Holders. You're familiar with the program. Obviously, it's down the road from you. We've seen them a couple times. Expectations are very high, and I still think it's a team that has a chance to make a deep run in the state tournament because their staff isn't necessarily building so that every week they can be ranked in our Power 25. Their ultimate goal is what happens in May, and I think they're playing their games right now, building towards that. But what have you seen a little bit about Corinth Holders, and are you concerned at all?
A different style, and that style fits you when you don't get to plan for them, like in the playoffs. Like Coach Weaver's, man, you're one of my best friends in this game. It's a very heavy oriented hit and run, running, bunting, pickoff. It's very skilled stuff. They steal bases, they first to third, it is, and it's something you have to prepare for. And actually, when I coached, I played them intentionally so that way if I ran into somebody, we knew or they would show us something. It was one of our best non-conference games for us. Man, on the mound, they got Music going to Campbell. They got Briggs going to LSU. They got a couple mid-80s arms behind them. I still think they're struggling to figure out the bullpen situation a little bit. A couple guys I think they're going to lean on. I think Dolanchek's one of them. Just a couple guys that are close. And, you don't want to see them because, they're not going to make mistakes. Offensively, they are a little bit lacking right now. They don't have that elite hitter. They're going to rely on 2 or 3 hits in an inning. The benefit to their game is 2 hits might get you a run because they're going to steal, bunt, first and third. So they don't quite need as many hits because of the type of athletes they have. And so for that, it makes hitting a little easier knowing you might only have to get 2 hits in an inning instead of 4 to get a run.
Patrick, as we look at number 19, South Meck, you and I have both seen them play. What was something that kind of stuck out to you about the Sabres in the game you saw?
Kind of to go along with what Zach said. Obviously they were playing a good team in Davie, and, there wasn't a whole lot of hits that game, not a lot of runs, 2 good pitchers throwing with Bagwell and Rogers. But same thing that Zach said, leadoff guy on, if it wasn't one of the top guys in the lineup, it was a bunt. Getting them over, looking for that timely hit to score a run. They made the routine plays, tried not to make mistakes. But obviously the game that I saw Bagwell threw, he threw great. And then they had a guy come in the back of the pen. He was 85, 86 with a good breaking ball. And I talked to Brian Hoop after the game. He said he has 2 or 3 guys just like that in the bullpen to go along with it. So maybe not a ton of top end arms, but they have guys that can get the job done, and they're gonna, manufacture the runs any way they can.
And I think it's one of the things that we're looking for, and when we're doing these Power 25s, and everybody can kind of be worried about is, okay, Cam Bagwell is a senior, he's going to UNC Wilmington. We've seen 93. He's going to be above 88 with just about every fastball he throws. He throws slider in his zone. But when we get in the state tournament, he may hit a pitch count. You may get the Thursday game or the Friday game when he threw on Tuesday. There's going to be a ton of guys that are 83 to 86, 81 to 84, but can really pitch, that are going to win tournament games. And so I think, like you said, South Meck has at least 3 or 4 they trust. And again, a very, very senior laden team. But I think those guys become important. And maybe they're not the household names, and maybe they don't strike fear in the opponent's lineup, but that ability for your team to trust. He's going to throw strikes. We're going to play defense. We're going to be fine. The game's not going to get away from us. He's not going to walk 2 and then run into a bat and then strike out 2 and then walk 3. We're going to be in control of the game, be able to manage the game, because he throws strikes and he can change speed. So I think it's something important, from our standpoint as we're continuing to evaluate these teams, but also from, an outsider looking in, trying to evaluate, okay, how is this team where they're at? It's not always that star player. It's, that next set of guys can really contribute a lot to, who makes those runs, especially in a single elimination type situation. So, Zach, one other team I want to get some information on, First Flight. Not a school that's been traditionally in our Power 25. It's still a younger school. They're still trying to build, kind of building their reputation. They're kind of way out there, the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Not a bad place to live. What do you know about First Flight, who's sitting at 6-1 right now?
I mean, I think they're a 2-headed monster. They got Isaac Miles, came to an event for us a couple of years ago. Big body righties, 85 to 89, going to UNC Greensboro. I think he hits in the middle of the order for him. Kind of gives him a dual power threat guy, kind of with the bat and on the arm. And then they got another guy named Riley Gibson. He's probably the high-end electric guy. Been up to 92. Got hurt last year, so I now think he's finally starting to hit strides. So, I mean, like, you tell me you got a guy that's 88 going to UNCG and a guy that's 92. I mean, those are 2 power arms. Plus, I think they got another conference starter back from the previous year. I mean, they're like, you were looking 3 competitive arms. Well, to be honest with you, in the playoffs or during the season, that's all you really need. I do think spring break might help them, get them a couple more games so some other guys can kind of get roles, and heck, some of them might need a little bit of a break, coming back off of injuries and stuff. So I think like this was a good time for them. And I mean, they're in a good spot. I think they're in a good spot in their conference. And I think they're in a good spot in the top 25 where they deserve to be there. And it's not a record based thing for me. It's more that they have enough talent to be there. Like they're not just there because of their record. They're there because they have enough players to be there.
Yeah, the one thing that stood out in box scores, obviously that's a tough place to get to sometimes to see. So we got them on our hit list, trying to see them at some point. But they have put the ball in play, and they've caught the ball consistently. Gibson and Miles, you're right, have given them good starts, good outings, but they've had other guys throw in just about every game. They're not walking a whole lot of guys. They're picking the baseball up, throwing across the diamond, and they're putting the ball in play, and that's giving them a chance. So their lone loss came to Greenbrier Christian out of Virginia in their very first game after I think it rained for about 10 days straight. So I like kind of where they're at. I think that's also a club that if they get in the tournament, it's a tough place to get to. Guys that have played in the Coastal Plains League, that college league, trying to get to Manteo back in the day, that regardless of 2 hours or 6 hours, it's just a rough drive at times. And so you're stop and go, you're over bridges and whatever. It'll be interesting. Clubs may have to go 4 hours to play on a Friday night and see how they kind of handle that drive. Let's move on. 11 through 15. At number 11, we've got one of our biggest movers. Cuthbertson's up from number 19. They're sitting at 11-0. D.H. Conley's at 12, up 1 from 13. Hoggard, another big mover. They're at 13. They're up from number 20. Ford held at number 14. And then number 15, Rambleman. So again, Cuthbertson, D.H. Conley, Hoggard, Ford, and Rambleman, 11 through 15. Patrick, let's start with you. I know you've seen Ford. We've talked about Randleman, and we've got Cuthbertson, who is also in the Charlotte area. Anything stand out with the clubs that are kind of in this grouping?
I mean, I haven't got to see Cuthbertson yet. Hoping to get to see him maybe spring break or soon. I mean, obviously with Ford, I've covered them twice. Same story. They're going to go wherever Jenkins and Trammell take them. They have good role players behind, but no one of the talent of those two. But they play solid defense. They hit the ball pretty well, and it's going to be wherever they take him because obviously with Jenkins on the mound, they can beat anybody. If he's on, they're gonna beat anyone. So them holding steady at 14, I mean, I think they're where they need to be. Obviously if they could put a run on and run the rest of the games off the rest of the year, but you know, uh, from what I've seen from them, they're where they need to be, and everyone else I haven't got to see yet so far this year.
Zach, what about Conley and Hoggard?
So I actually just kind of looked up a little bit of Hoggard. Hoggard's led by an ace, Butcher, going to Asheville,
Yep.
6'7" guy, lot to dream on, 87, 91, 92. Real tough place to play. They won the big crosstown rival against Ashley, I think, last week. I'll give you a better insight on 418, Hoggard, Ashley. I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys I will be there front row and center, weather pending. I will be there on the Friday night. I'm looking forward to that. Hoggard's really senior laden. All three of their top arms are seniors, obviously led by Butcher. So, as I said, I'll probably have a little better insight when we get there. Conley, kind of same way. They got Treadway going to Wingate for
Yep.
sure. And then I think they got a guy going to ECU, Riley Williams.
Yeah,
Riley Williams. And then they got the catcher that moved in, the transfer of Butcher, Riker. No,
Riker Butcher.
Yep. So, I mean, those are three high-end tools guys. Mills does a great job there. And, they're highly competitive. They're going to pitch just because every Jason Mills team since I've ever known them has been able to pitch. And I've never known them not to be able to pitch. So I think that they're kind of where they're supposed to be. Offensively, I think that, they might lack the overall big power hitter. I think they got a lot of bat to ball skill guys, athletes. I don't think they have that one home run hitter, which in high school there's not. A lot of schools don't really have that guy, so they're not missing a lot. But they got a lot of athletes in the lineup, and I mean, speaking of places that are hard to play, like D.H. Conley's a hard place to play. Just, your first time there, to be honest with you, if you're a pitcher, they got a radar board, tells you how fast you throw. And it's an adjustment. It's just one of those things where an opposing team, you show up, the guy's like, I throw 89, the first ball's 84, and then all of a sudden you're starting to overthrow, trying to chase the number on a radar board for the first time in your life. It's a little different place to play. I mean, they're not really ever going to be outmatched and outskilled, I don't think. I mean, Mills is a great coach, so I'm not sure they're ever going to be outcoached either, especially with the staff. So I think that they're in a really good spot. They can make a run anytime. They got enough arms, they got enough hitters, they got enough coaching, they got enough talent.
Yeah, the thing with this group that kind of stood out to me as we're going through it, and it's just by happenstance they're 11 through 15, but I think all five of these clubs are starting to have an identity. Randleman has got Seth Way at the front end of their rotation. They've got some depth and some strike throwers, but they've pounded the baseball. I think they understand we need to score runs over the course of a week to win as many games as possible, and they have. Ford, Patrick hit the nail on the head with, does Jenkins and do Trammell, do they set the tone? There will be games they will win when those two guys may not play their best. But over the course of a week, that club's going to go as those two guys go. They can't have a lot of games where those two guys don't show up, and they haven't. Hoggard has been in some tight games. They've won tight games. And really what you're seeing with them watching from afar is the depth of their roster and their willingness to use it. They've had guys play in some different positions. They've had some different roles with pitchers. They've used a bunch of different arms in certain games, and they trust their depth. And we're going to keep going to a different guy until we find the guy that's hot. And then we'll stick with him and we'll win that game. We saw a team at 4A level win a state title doing that last year. Conley, I think their identity is the mound. And the only reason I say that is we do the reports on the Power 25 last week. We talked about, hey, they're 6-1, and in those 7 games, they've only given up, I think it was like 9 runs. So pitcher heavy, nobody's going to score any runs on them. And all of a sudden this week, I think they played 2 games this week and they averaged 12 runs a game. So, it's encouraging, especially as good as they have a chance to be pitching and defense wise, they can have those outbursts. And then Cuthbertson, here's the interesting part about Cuthbertson. They play in a league that plays 3 games a week. So they had Sun Valley this week, who's a good program and has several athletes on the field that are going to play at the next level. And they played them 3 games. Sweeping a team for 3 games is hard, especially when when your ace is going to throw, and they do too, because they'll just hold their ace. If it's not a good matchup, you may see the ace in number 3 when you threw your 1 and your 2 in first 2 games. So that's your 3 versus their 1. And I think teams are going to do that to Cuthbertson at times throughout their conference play, and they're not going to flinch. They haven't yet so far. They're going to play defense. They're going to pick the ball up, throw it across the diamond. They're going to put the ball in play, and they have a couple guys on the front end of the rotation, especially with Potts going to NC State. They have a chance to really, any given night throws a ton of zeros and get you a win against a quality opponent. So watch out for Cuthbertson, especially as we get towards the end of the year, and how much depth they built on the mound in key games where their 3, 4, 5, and 6 have had to throw in games where maybe it's against somebody else's 1. So I do love the conferences that do that. You're seeing more and more conferences go to, even when they play conference series, it's a 2-game set, but it's the same week. And Zach, when you were coaching, did you guys do that? Or did you guys get hammered on, you would throw your ace on Fridays and you would see everybody else's ace on Tuesdays trying to stay away from yours?
Well, we had the old, the round robin set sequence, and some teams, us, didn't exactly follow the best teams in the conference.
Right.
So we saw ace, and sometimes you saw 2, 1, 2, and 3 because you could throw 4 on Tuesday and be able to get away with it. It all depended on who you followed, and
Right.
I was on the side of we didn't exactly follow the best team. So you saw ace. It's different. It actually just shifted the year after I retired from high school coaching to same team, same week. So they kind of fixed it. I guess I've never experienced it. Whenever I was a coach, it was always you just played your schedule the first 7 and then it flip flopped. I mean, obviously to me it didn't matter. Like I didn't really care. If you want to beat us with your best, go ahead. So I get both sides to it. Like we probably didn't finish as high in conference because we were like second or third. And sometimes it was like, hey, did y'all see this guy? When you go to the all conference voting, you were like, well, this guy never pitched against us. And I was like, well, I saw that guy 4 times. So it kind of like, at one point in time, I remember like Coach Center talking like Carlos Rodon was 6-0 against Fuquay and Jimmy Boyd was 6-0 against Fuquay. And the guy in the conference meeting was like, well, we never saw either. And he was like, because you followed us. And it was just
Right.
like one of those things where like you could mix and match it. And, if you can look ahead and be able to throw that, yeah, I mean, it's difficult. So
It can prepare you for the state tournament. You got to get there first. I do like the fact that conferences have tried to negate that a little bit. Now they're playing 2-game series. You're seeing a lot more of that. But again, I think it's a tremendous advantage. I don't know the name of the conference. Cuthbertson and Weddington and Sun Valley and, those schools kind of down in that South Charlotte, that southeastern Charlotte area. I think it's a huge advantage. And you've seen, Marvin Ridge and Weddington and, some of those clubs like that on years where they've got good clubs, but maybe in Power 25, they're in 20 to 25 range. And all of a sudden during a state tournament, they get hot. Because I think that the state tournament eases up on them. That intensity of having to play the same team 3 straight times in a week matches a little bit of what you see at tournament time. And so those guys are prepped. But it'll be something interesting to kind of follow. Let's move ahead to number 6 through 10. So now we're getting into our top 10. We'll start at number 10 with a 6-2 TC Roberson. Roberson down from number 5 to number 10. Charlotte Christian. Charlotte Christian's down from number 4 to number 9, and we're going to talk about them a little bit. At number 8, West Henderson. At number 7, J.H. Rose. And at number 6, Burns. So 6 through 10 again: Burns, J.H. Rose, West Henderson, Charlotte Christian, and T.C. Roberson. Patrick, first impressions, you're looking at those schools pop up in that 6 through 10 list. Anybody that's underseeded, overseeded, or did we hit it right on the head?
I mean, I like Burns. I think we've talked about them a couple times. They have pitching, they have hitting. They play in a pretty decent conference. You talked about Charlotte Christian. We were talking about it before we started the podcast about how I was looking forward to going and seeing them. We were talking about their record and how they played good talent. I've seen West Henderson a couple times pop up on our scoreboards when I've been putting them in. Seen they've been playing well. Don't know a whole lot about them just yet, but another one that I'm hoping to get out and see. But Burns, for me, I like them. I think they're ranked high, but I think they should be there. I mean, they have talent all around the field.
Yeah, so Burns is at 9-0, sitting number 6, coming off a state title, returning just about everybody, and then adding to that roster. They have not given up I don't think they've given up more than one run in a game yet.
No.
So offensively, if we score 2, we win. That's a pretty good. That gives you a chance. West Henderson, again, another defending state champion. Truett Manuel, and I love what they do with them, although it's harder to sometimes see them. But Truett Manuel may be the best arm in the state. NC State commit, very athletic, football, basketball, baseball. But they don't necessarily say, okay, hey, Friday's yours. They try to pitch him in the back end of the week, but he's available at the front end of the week to close. And so if he closes on Tuesday, he may not start on Friday. They use him again to close. And, they've got Jackson Lyda. They've got the other, I think, another Lyda brother. They've got some depth on the roster. Again, they've caught the ball, and they've won the tournament. I think understanding how to win that tournament plays dividends, huge dividends, as you get into the tournament next year, because you understand what it's like to get through it. And then Charlotte Christian. Charlotte Christian's 5-4. And I know you and I talked about them and where do they position in this Power 25, and we did drop them, and we thought about not dropping them, leaving them at 4, even though they're 5-4, because they have wins over Wayne Country Day, T.C. Roberson. There's another one in there I'm forgetting, and their losses. Excuse me. Their losses are Wesleyan Christian Academy, Lexington High School in South Carolina, who they split with, but Lexington's a state title contender down there. And then they got caught. They went to James Island. James Island in South Carolina threw an arm at them. It was Christian's third game of the week. I think it was James Island's only game of the week. They saw all of James Island's arms. A little bit of what happened when they played Wesleyan Christian. They threw Charlotte Christian threw Grant Nicholson. He was good, but Wesleyan Christian went with Hammonds, Lance, and then Cozart. So they threw 3 of their 4 aces. And that's a tough situation when you're trying to, okay, how do we match up? They're not going to be able to do that in a tournament. Those guys will have already thrown. So Charlotte Christian at 9, I think, there's an argument that we're a little soft on them right now, but at 5-4, we want to see a little bit more consistency there as well. Zach, anything that you see out of that grouping?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rose is there. Potential 4A East might be the favorite in the 4A East. They got arms.
Depth
they got
on the mound there.
Yeah, I mean, they got Hathaway, they got Simmons, they got Wallen. They got 3 legit arms. They got a couple of guys. Wallen swings it well. The Simmons brother swings it well. They got Watson up the middle. Like, there is, they're not one-sided. And, they can beat you by scoring 10 or they can beat you by shutting you out. And I think this is kind of the range we're at where teams have everything. They're going to have an off night, in order for them to get beat. And off night might have to be on both. They're going to win a lot of games where they don't swing it because they pitch it, or they swing it a lot and they might not pitch it as well. But, I think you're in the range of teams where they have enough multifaceted type deals where they are good enough to beat everybody in different facets of the game.
Right.
I think that's kind of where we are in this is now you are at, Rose is 10-1. I'm going to hopefully make it to the DH Conley matchup. I'm assuming that'll be the biggest ticket in Greenville for that night. And I think that's just kind of where the game is for them. Downside is that they're supposed to win. So, that's always hard because you're taking everybody's best shot. They've been in every ranking since we started and probably be at every ranking until we end it. And so, everybody sees that. They want their best shot. They want to take out everybody. So, they're taking everybody's best shot every time they step on the field, which is hard sometimes, because you might see two aces versus one ace. You might see somebody in the midweek try and just beat you. But I think they have enough talent where that's not going to matter right now.
Let's move to the top 5. So we're finishing up our Power 25 with the top 5 teams in North Carolina, regardless of affiliation or classification. At number 5, down from number 2, sitting at 6-2 on the year, Grace Christian Academy. At number 4, up from number 9 at 12-0, Wayne Country Day. At number 3, a 10-1 Reagan High School. At number 2, a 10-0 Metrolina Christian Academy. And holding at number 1 for the third straight time we've put this out, with an overall 8-1 record, Wesleyan Christian Academy. And I think this is a loaded group here. We've seen several. We've seen all these clubs play. They've got stars on the infield. They've got stars on the pitching mound. They got stars on the lineup. But there is a significant line from number 1 to number 2 right now in my mind. That drop from 1 to 2 might as well be 1 to 15. It's not a slide at Metrolina Christian or Reagan or Wayne Country Day or anybody else. Wesleyan Christian Academy has 4 aces. Wesleyan Christian Academy may have the best hitter in North Carolina sitting in the middle of their order. And they've got protection around him with really good high school hitters. Then they've got a couple other potential guys in that junior class that are sitting there protecting Sawyer Black as well. So it's a lineup that is imposing. It's a lineup that's scary. It's a lineup that can score very, very quickly. It's a lineup that can puts a bunch of athletes on the field. And then on the mound, they've got 2 dudes I saw last week bumping 94th consistently. Their best quote-unquote pitcher overall is a senior, Hudson Lance, can really spin a breaking ball. He was 88 to 90, may have bumped a 1, but the breaking ball is a difference maker. Didn't see Papsiak. It's another one. The only question mark on what Wesleyan Christian Academy is defensively. Are they strong enough on the infield to weather a storm if they're not getting strikeouts? The problem is we may not see that because they've got such a plethora of power arms and power stuff. They're going to have strikeouts. But if a team can put the ball in play consistently against them, force the left side of their infield to play and play with some pace, we may have a team. There may be a couple teams in this group where we could see at least the pitching match up with them, on a one-game scenario. There, Metrolina Christian, Charlotte Christian, 3-game scenario, maybe, especially if one of those games is a blowout and they can hold their arms for games 1 and games 3. Patrick, any thoughts on this group of 5?
I think just what you said about the level of talent and how the arms and the players in the top 5, it's all over the field. It's complete. It's a big difference in the top 5. I mean, obviously Metrolina Christian's 10-0. They got Perry and then Kiker on the mound. Just a lot of talent in the top 5, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of the season plays out with the top 5 here.
Zach?
I'm going to give Reagan a lot of props here. The one public high school in the top 5. And I think that should be a testament to you probably are the favorite in 4A. If you're ranked among these teams, you probably are the leader in the pack right now. So to me, Reagan, you are the 4A favorite, whether you like being it or not. I think that's kind of should show you kind of where that line is in 4A, who is the favorite. When you start doing rankings, you get little mixed match divisions and everything. Some things can kind of get skewed. 4A is probably the biggest baseball in North Carolina. So to me, if you got a team, public high school in the top 5, that gives you a good indication of probably who is leading the charge in 4A baseball right there.
That's an interesting conversation. I don't want to get too in-depth on it today, but thoughts on that public versus private. Now, the private schools in this state aren't overtly recruiting. There may be some subtle recruiting going on. There may be some subtle things that happen. Players are recruiting harder than the coaches. just being around these guys and watching what happens. And the coaches, honestly, they don't have time to be out there watching a ton of games and sending out recruiting letters and doing recruiting spiels to the, sophomore. But, a guy comes across his desk or steps foot on campus, yeah, he's going to talk to him, especially if they're in the area. Medtronic Christian Academy hasn't been a baseball power. Their head coach, who played at Liberty, and his name escapes me right now, does a tremendous job with those guys and building that program up over the last 4 years and watching that program grow. It's homegrown. They've developed talent. Obviously, Charlotte Christian has been a known power, and they do a lot of really good things in this the city. But a lot of their players are on campus from the time they're in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, all the way through. So it's not like they're going out and picking out middle school kids to convert them over. It happens every now and then. There may be a guy that shows up late, but for the most part, those guys are in that school a long time. When we look at this and we look at the yes, we're a little heavy with the private schools in the top 5, 4 of the top 5. But then when we go to that next group, 1, 2, 3. The next group has four of the 5 are public. And then as we continue to scroll through, it becomes very heavy on the public schools. Is it a fair comparison in the state of North Carolina? Year in and year out, there's obviously going to be some outlier years, but year in and year out, fair comparison to have these clubs kind of compete against each other in this Power 25?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like I coached in it, and we've played some private schools. The benefit is if they'll play you, that kind of gives you, like it's a little bit of both. Like you want to play schools like this. Like I mean, like when I was at Fuquay, Malvern Prep showed up from Pennsylvania one year. Like, hey, we want to play. Come on. Like if you can get a good public school to take it, like you should. And I know some people shy away from it and some people don't want to because like I did coach. Do we have to re-recruit a guy or two? Yeah, but I mean, they was doing what was in the best interest for them. Like they were pro prospects, and they were trying to figure out if Fuquay Varina was the best place for a pro prospect or going somewhere else was the best. Like you got to make those decisions. It's okay, but no, like if you play it and you'll take it the right way, like it's fine. Like I'm all in on it. Like let's see who's the best baseball. I mean they might have an extra guy or two, or you might have more. It's hard to play the series effect of it, but if you can catch them in a midweek game on a Friday night and you can put your best versus their best, like, I think it should happen maybe a little bit more. I know some people are hard on it, because they do get to recruit and, they have other advantages. Like, the biggest advantage of a private school like that is the amount of coaches that they have and the amount of money they can spend on coaching. North Carolina, I'm not going to throw a whole lot of shade on you guys, but they don't pay coaches a whole lot, and their assistant coaches don't make no money. So to me, when you can get 4 coaches for good pay, your baseball should be better. And to me, like they're going for talent and they're going for training.
Well, that's a great point because you start talking about the number of athletes you have. If you've got 15 on your varsity, even if you're light on your JV and you go 12. You got 2 coaches to 27 guys. That's skill development is really in the hands of the players at that point. We set up things for them to do. Patrick, on the western side of the state, there are some fairly good private schools. Obviously, Wesleyan Christian. There's Christ School. There's some other ones in Asheville that have kind of popped up. We've talked about Gaston Christian before we got on the air today. So there's some really good ones there. But again, you're seeing, public schools kind of dominate the Power 25 outside of that top 5 right now. Any thoughts on your area and kind of what you're seeing?
I mean, just from your initial point, I mean, I think it is what it is. The Power 25 is supposed to be the best 25 teams. It is what it is, private or public. But, y'all hit all the points about the advantages that the private schools have. But there's definitely been a shift. I can remember back from when I played. I mean, there were certain schools, public schools, where they were the powerhouses. It has shifted a little bit, but I mean, I think it is what it is when you have to deal with it. And like Zach said, play them. And it's going to do nothing but make them better.
It's a good point. And again, the baseball across the state is so good. We're I think it's a fun argument to have. I think the kids are having the argument too, and they're constantly worried about this or that and trying to figure it out. We can have fun with it. What I do like is the development of baseball players across the state has continued, at a fairly strong level. And I know schools have been diluted. There's been more schools. The coaching has definitely been diluted. But year in and year out, our state remains one of the per capita most draftable states in the union. So excited about that. We're excited about continuing to cover the series, the season. Next up for us is spring break. Patrick, this is your first one kind of covering North Carolina and be on the get out. I know you talked about trying to get to a couple different places where you may get fed well. Zach's already kind of gotten out and seen Terry Sanford and been on the pork chop sandwich deal there.
Yeah.
We're initially kind of looking at the spring break tournaments. Coaches, if you've got information, send it to us. We're posting all the schedules for college coaches and pro scouts. They are already on the site looking for this stuff. We just need full schedules if you got them. But, thoughts on what we're getting ready to see, Zach, and your thoughts on, I know you talked about spring break being your turning point.
Yeah, I'm excited. Probably going to go see the Bobby Murray. Got to play in it. Got to coach in it. So you might as well go ahead and get the scout in it. You might as well go ahead and get the trifecta. So, I'm excited. I get to see some old coaches I used to coach against. To me, it's hard. It's the last part of spring break. When I was a coach, I used to like the first part of spring break off and then come back for the second half. So your kids had a little bit of a spring break. So they got to unwind, practice on Wednesday, Bobby Murray Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So to me, this is the right, for me, because it builds you to get ready to go back into conference play. I never really liked playing the first weekend of spring break and then having a week off and then conference game on Tuesday and your only practice was on Monday. It's, as I said, to all you players out there, don't do anything dumb to harm yourself or your team. It means a lot. Sunscreen matters, even if you don't. We've lost every kid every year. Third-degree burns. You can't pitch in blisters. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that. Your T-shirt won't work. Tank tops are cool. Tank top tans are fun. But being able to lift your right arm without blisters is even more fun. So just go ahead and be prepared for those and just take care of yourselves and your body because, that's a big thing coming. And these games matter. I mean, it might be the difference in you getting into it might be the difference in your playoff ranking because you might be playing a high-ranked team and that strength of schedule, if you get blown out, it might hurt you. These matter more than you think, especially if you can get a high-ranked team and a chance to beat somebody or knock somebody off, especially if you got your one going against a 3 or something because they're not going to take into that into account.
Patrick, any big memories from your playing days on spring break, and it was something you looked forward to? And
I loved it. Yeah, we always had the Easter tournament over at the fairgrounds, and I'll be there this year. I'm going to check it out. My biggest memory was actually one of my longtime friends, Dustin Harrington, played at ECU, went to Alexander. We're business partners now as well, and it was me and him in a game, and he ended up beating me. And when we got into business together, he had the newspaper article that was headlined "Harrington beats Johnson," and it's still hanging when you walk in the door of our facility. And
absolutely, as it should be.
I get it every day. But yeah, no, it was fun. It might not be regular season playoffs, but those games were intense, and that was probably one of the things for me. Everyone wanted to win.
There's something about just having a day to play baseball. Not having to worry about school, hopefully the girlfriends have already gone to the beach, and we just, as a group, we get to play. And I've seen state championship teams form over that week. I've seen groups that have been kind of middling really get it together. I've also seen teams fall apart. What Zach's saying, a couple selfish guys go out and they don't put sunscreen on. They do something they're not supposed to do. They break a law, and all of a sudden the season's ruined for 15, 20 guys. So, yes, enjoy this week. Have fun with it. It's a great time of year. Ideally, the weather's going to be nice. And then make good decisions on the back end. So we're not your moms. We're not your dads. We're not your coaches. We're just baseball fans that want to see everybody have a chance to thrive and year in and year out. A good person and a good kid and a good player makes a decision they want back. So as teammates, help each other out, make good decisions this upcoming week, and For Zach Borowski, for Patrick Johnson, I'm Brandon Hall. This is the Prep Baseball Report of North Carolina podcast. We'll see you at the field.